Welcome back to BCB Live. We're the safest station in the nation, and we are broadcasting from Women in Trucking 2022 right here at the Anatole in Dallas, Texas. We're talking about Big D right here, and not a bigger or better opportunity for us to really show and showcase the women in trucking. Courtney, and we throw it down to you first. What are your thoughts so far on Women in Trucking 2022?
Women in Trucking 2022, this has been the biggest event for them. I've attended every year that they've had the conference, and it's just such great energy to be here. We're getting to see and learn a lot of new things that we haven't seen in the past, and really get to connect as well as network with new people that haven't had the opportunity to attend in the past.
All right, Balaji, ladies first. Here we go. Now to you, Lindsey. What are your thoughts so far? I mean, what have you seen maybe at this year from Women in Trucking that you didn't see or haven't seen in other conferences you've been going to?
The collaboration with women is just beautiful. It's fun to sit at a table, and you might have competitors sitting together, but we're collaborating. We are getting to know each other and talking about best practices and how we can make the industry a better place for women to work, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and Balaji, I know you came in here a little bit later. Welcome to Women in Trucking. What were you? I mean, I know you didn't get any. The place is so crowded. No food left for those that come in late too. I like that. You know what? If you don't show up on time, you're not getting fed, Balaji. What do you thought?
I think the energy is awesome. This is my first Women in Trucking. I'm looking forward to being here every year. This is awesome. The energy is great. I think it's a place where I'm starting to see a whole part of trucking that I don't normally see, and I'm glad to make the network and connections, and this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? We're here together. You talk about collaboration. We've got to continue to work together to make a difference in this industry, not only just for the industry, but for the women in trucking. And we talked about that on these shows today. It's not just about driving a truck. There's so many other opportunities out there. Things that we've got to do, and I know Hudson, she spoke about that today, that truck parking. I mean, it continues to be an issue. It doesn't matter whether you're a male or female. When you go to an unlit facility, when you go to a place and you're searching all day for parking, it's scary. It's not right, and it's not fair to these drivers that have saved us over these past years. Courtney, what are your thoughts on this parking issue that we're continue to see?
The parking issue has been a huge problem for the industry alone. We have seen it for so many years when I got into this industry in 2004 until now, but the safety aspect is really what's something that we're really trying to help make sure that every female out there knows that they have a safe spot. It is great to see partners of Rees Across America like Pilot is opening and adding new trucking parking every single day, but it has to fall on everyone in this industry to make it great, not just at a truck stop, but also sometimes our drivers are having to take their 10 hours at a shipper and receiver. We need to make sure that they have lighting, that they feel safe, they have access to facilities.
Yeah, and I agree. And Lindsey, what about the kids? I mean, we're trying to bring this younger group in here. I mean, how do we sell that to them when we know that today there's just not a lot of it there?
Yeah, so we're going to have to do better. We're going to have to make changes, and we're going to have to use technology in order to do that. And I think that will be able to attract young people to feel safe and know that we are an industry committed to technology and committed to making things better for the driver.
Yeah, Balaji, we talk about technology. I immediately think about HopTech, what you do in optimizing decision-making processes. If in fact you had access to open truck spots, right, throughout the country, and you were able to grab that, could you take that open truck spots across all the truck stops across America and optimize that into a driver's day to get them there safely?
Absolutely. So one of the things we do is for a truck that's already underway dispatched on a road, we can actually look forward and see where do they need to take hours of service breaks, and we are actually calculating the truck stops and the rest stops that are closest to where they are able to maximize. Now, we are doing this thing simply from our database of where the truck stops are, but with the data that starts to come in about where the truck stops are, have spaces, where if you are able to actually forward looking in the next 3, 6, 8 hours, already make reservations there, then you can essentially plan your trip in such a way that you're working through in a the adherence to a schedule of a driver in a very safe, clear fashion becomes much more easier. Today there is so much of this onus being placed on the drivers to find the places they have to stop and so on. It's like, most of the white collar workers would stop working if this level of decision making has to happen like a driver does on the road.
Yeah, I agree. When I think about truck spots, parking spaces for a driver, I really do. I think about if the driver could know that when I get to Shreveport, Louisiana, I have a spot reserved for me. Let me tell you something. It helps them drive with purpose. They're a safer driver because they're not wondering. It's another distraction that comes out of their mind that knowing that they have a place to sleep, and that's a problem when we don't have these spots. When we don't have safe places. It leads to turnover, and I'm saying the bad turnover. And Courtney, let me go to you on this right here. I think about the turnover because this turnover probably leads them to leave our industry. And that's the worst turnover.
That is the worst turnover. I think that as an industry, we have struggled with that. With my background in recruiting and retention, I can tell you that is one of the main stressors for a driver out there. And the one thing that I don't want someone who is behind the wheel to do is stress that they have to figure out where they can park, where it's safe. They don't want to be on the end of the road where they might get hit. We have opportunities. This trucking industry has done a million times better to get more dedicated routes, to get home daily, to make it more attractive. But we still have to do a better job communicating that.
Yeah, we do. And Lindsey, on that same thing, the only way we're ever going to really fight the driver shortage, or one way to fight the driver shortage, is number one, to quit losing drivers leaving our network while bringing those in. Turnover is a major issue. Any thoughts, ideas on just what we need to do as an industry to number one, stop it so they quit leaving, and number two, fix it so they're welcome. They jump into our industry.
Well, we've got to make it attractive by providing technology.
Thank you.
Yep. And technology is very attractive to young people. And so we have to, as an industry, come up with technology that is going to make them feel safe, that is going to make them want to stay and continue their career as a professional driver. And so that's what it's all about. It's about creating those pipelines, but also creating middle school, high school programs where they can start to be introduced to trucking and get trained, and then create a good job that's safe, where they feel comfortable, and where they can be successful.
Yeah, and our industry, and I tell you, this is a major problem I think that we have, is to bring in that younger group, that next generation into this industry, is listen, when they show up to work on time, they need to get paid. None of this 2 hours free, how do you bring somebody into this job force today? You talked about, other white collar places. How do you come into work on time and yet you don't get paid until after the first 2 hours because the first 2 hours are free? What does that even mean? Anybody?
No one would ask any of us to come in and work for 2 hours for free. So why should we expect that from someone else? It really comes back to treating our drivers and our staff with dignity and respect. That's where we lose people. That's why organizations and the technology that are out there are so important to us, because we know what's happening. But treat somebody with respect, because at the end of the day, they have families that they're taking care of. They have homes, and they have to outsource things to get done in their home, whether it's their grass mowing or whatnot, because they're out on the road. So we have to pay them for that.
Balaji, what do you think when I say those words about drivers showing up to work on time and yet they don't get paid for 2 hours after they show up? Optimization, using your technology, how can you make a difference in that?
Well, a lot of these drivers that show up and don't move on time, they are waiting in customer locations, they are deadheading. A lot of this is actually a consequence of the dispatch planning not being effective. Right? At the end of the day, when you have 100 trucks and like 3 loads to move, it's not an easy problem for anyone to solve. It's not a human solvable problem. So optimization is a method to actually figuring out the best combination of things that squeeze out this inefficiency, squeeze out the waiting that the drivers have to do, the deadheading that they're doing. So in other words, even for a fleet company, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to pay this driver 2 hours to wait, using optimization is a way for the fleets to say, I'm actually optimizing the way I'm using my resources, making sure that they are productive in the time that they are giving us, and optimization really is a win-win for all around, because it makes the fleets get better value, better utilization of their assets and drivers. The drivers move more, they get paid more. The customers are happy because you're picking up and dropping off things in the right time. There's certain all-round goodness that comes from being able to do a fleet level planning that's absolutely impossible for an individual planner to be able to do.
But Lindsey, how do you fix it? I mean, who's going to be the first company to say, you know what, you show up on time, driver, I'm going to pay you no matter what? Because every trucking company is going to have to do that for this to work, to get that, again, that younger group to come in. Nobody wants to work for free. I mean, we wouldn't do it at the office. How do we tackle this as an industry, as a trucking industry?
Well, if you use optimization, like what you were saying, then the carrier is going to be more successful because they're optimizing their loads and they're not deadheading and they're providing their product on time. And so it's a win-win. It's just a matter of getting it out there and pushing it out.
Courtney, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, when are trucking companies ever going to start paying at hour one, minute one? I mean,
I think
it's
that
hard.
there's a trend. The LTL industry is already doing that. But the optimization is going to be key for the full truckload carriers. To his point, you have all the data to really better plan. But what you can also do with that data is take it back to your customer and say, hey, my driver arrived on time. You made him wait 6 hours. Or I had drivers that hated going into the Northeast and would try to turn down a load towards the end of the week because if they get there at 3 o'clock, they know they're not getting unloaded, and then they have to sit there all weekend. And unfortunately, you know, the warehouses and receivers and shippers all play a part in this. So being able to go back and take that data and go, here's the full picture. I understand how this affects you, but like, there's definitely a ripple down effect. So how can we work together now that we have this data? You probably have data. Let's all put it together. Let's paint the full picture so we can make this better, not just for our driver, but for you.
So I'll open this up to anybody. So we say all of these things and everything that I hear, there is a cost associated to it, right? Is it the end of the small carrier? I mean, is the bigger just going to continue to get big? I mean, at some point, all the detention modules, all the optimization, the ability to pay somebody on minute one, how many small companies can afford to do that? Are the bigger companies just going to continue to get bigger? I mean, we see it happening. Anybody?
Well, let me take a technology view on this, right? So clearly, the industry is extremely fragmented to the extent that 93% of the carriers are, 6 trucks or less.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to continue. It's not, you cannot wipe away this thing, right? Very easily. Even if the big carriers are there and they're investing in technology, a lot of us won't get our goods if the small guys are not still moving. Now, the nature of the industry is that you think that it's going to cost a lot of investments to get your data right, to be able to level the playing field with the big ones. Not necessary. Like one of the things that Hoptech is actually doing is to be able to say, how do you off the bat get solutions that get your data better, that give you an insight into how your fleet is moving, that allow you to know where the gaps in your network, actually bring a lot of professional digital transformation into even a small company in a way that you're able to, it doesn't matter how big you are, how can you play with the big guys and be able to throw the ball and make those catches.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Balaji, because I agree with you on that. The technology's there, and you've got to find a way to measure that to your profitability. Courtney, you were a recruiter on that. When you're spending $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 in turnover for a driver, to lose a driver, there is cost in there, and you've got to find a way to, if I can reduce my turnover, I'm going to be a safer company. If I can reduce my turnover, I'll be able to get more of that customer freight. If I can reduce my turnover, all of a sudden, you know what? This optimization that I was so scared of, it's more than paid for itself.
Paid for itself.
Cost of turnover, talk a little bit about that.
Cost of turnover is huge. Being, a director and being a recruiter at that point is something, because I look at it and go, not only do I look at what it costs us for a truck to sit still, what does it cost me in advertising, what does it cost me in salary, benefits, all of those things, bringing people in, what we're doing to get people there. That retention is such key. It becomes something that you sit there and the more you look at the numbers, the more your stomach gets squeezy. because there is a cost. I'd say,
I'm thinking frustration. How frustrating is it to wait, to not get paid, to be nervous that you don't have a place to park?
That's when recruiting companies get the phone calls, right? They're calling us, hey, I'm stuck here and I don't ever want to be like that again. What's your detention policy? And your recruiters really have to know everything and be ready to go. What's your detention policy? How do you pay? When do you pay? Do you hold a week back? How do you feel about this? What do you do if I get to a shipper up in New Jersey? They tell me, oops, we're not going to get you unloaded now. And even though you showed up on time, you're still not going to get unloaded until Monday. How are you going to handle that so it doesn't affect my check and also affects my income? Because the moment that somebody doesn't get home for little Billy's, birthday party, they're done. They're already calling another company, and every company is going to try to give them a job and tell you, yes, it's not going to happen. I'd love to tell somebody, no matter what carrier you work for, yeah, I can make sure that doesn't happen. No, I can't. But what I can do is try to make it up to you. How do I make this better for you? And how do I give you the honesty? Because that's where your recruiter really sells the retention. Being honest, going, hey, we're not going to do everything perfect. But if you run into an issue, call me. Because a driver is going to turn around and call the recruiter because it's the first person they ever talk to at a company when they have a problem.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Lindsey, I want you to I really do. I want you to look in this camera because you're dealing with that younger group. You're out there and you're talking to that young group about getting into our industry. But for that to happen and for us to really do that, we've got to make changes on our side as well. If there was something, 2, 3, one thing, whatever that is, you would want to say to a trucking company, to the transportation industry, to make it better for those that are coming in here, hey, what would it be?
Well, we want trucking companies and people in the industry to get involved in education, and they need to sell the trucking industry to education and to young people. And in order to sell that, they're going to have to make it better. They're going to have to work on truck parking and making people feel safe at rest stops. And so trying to make the industry better, optimize with technology, and be engaged in education. Be out there telling young people about jobs in trucking. And we've got resources to give you to be able to go to your school and give them presentations on trucking. And so it's a great industry, but let's make it better.
Yes, for certain. Thank you. And I'm going to add something to it in just a second. Before I do that, we got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to close this up. Courtney, I'm going to start with you. Hey, tell us a little bit about Wreaths Across America.
Wreaths Across America is the best thing in the trucking industry. What we do is we take sponsored wreaths. We work with trucking companies. This year, we're going to have close to 600 donated loads that haul roughly 2.5 million wreaths to honor our veterans. And we can't do this without the trucking industry. We focus on remembering, honoring, and teaching. We do all of those things 365 days a year. The trucking industry really comes in that last quarter and makes what we do that 3rd December each year the best thing ever. We all get to come together. We help people. We honor people. It's the most important load you're ever going to haul.
Wow, ma'am, heart's full. Love it, right? Wow, Balaji, it's going to be a tough one to top that one. But hey, talk to us a little bit about HopTech and what you are doing for this industry.
Very good. HopTech is a technology startup. It's a venture that's owned by Courtney, which is a management consulting. And so we've basically seen from the consulting side all the problems that trucking companies go through, and it always comes down to figuring out that there are not enough tools in the industry for doing the right kind of real-time dispatch optimization. So we decided to do it ourselves. We basically went out, built a advanced technology stack. We're basically talking to customers. Our HopTech is about providing the fleets an ability to plan in real time, being able to find the gaps in your network and close this through dynamic freight optimization. The idea here is that it's a win-win, as I said before, helping companies to get more loads, more miles, helping drivers get more miles, go home on time for Billy's game. It's a big deal. And we are in women in trucking, and women still don't make up as much of a percentage of in trucking as they do outside anywhere else.